Commander stood alone in the observation deck of the survey vessel Eternal Horizon. The ship hummed quietly around her, its engines pushing them through the cold emptiness between stars. She pressed her three-fingered hand against the cold glass and stared out at the darkness. Behind her, a holographic map floated in the air. It showed the known galaxy in brilliant colors. Blue lines marked trade routes. Green dots showed friendly worlds. Red circles warned of dangerous zones. 10,000 civilizations existed in that map. 1,000,000 paths connected them. Billions of worlds had been named, studied, and recorded. But ahead of the ship, through the window, there was nothing. No colors, no markers, no paths. Just endless black. Had seen many strange things in her 40 years of service. She had mapped the burning storms of where plasma waves could melt a ship in seconds. She had charted the gravity wells near dead stars, places where time itself bent and twisted. She had walked on worlds made entirely of crystal, where the ground sang beneath her feet. None of that scared her. This darkness scared her. The door behind her slid open with a soft hiss. She did not turn around. She already knew who it was by the sound of his footsteps. "You should be sleeping, Navigator," she said. Walked up beside her. He was younger than her by 15 years, his scales still bright green where hers had faded to a dull gray. His eyes, large and round like all their kind, reflected the stars outside. "I cannot sleep," he said quietly. "I keep thinking about where we are going." Nodded slowly. "So do I." "Commander," said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, "the Galactic Atlas ends here, right here. I checked the maps 3 times. After this point there is nothing, no data, no records, no probe has ever come back from this region." "I know." "Then why are we going?" Finally turned to look at him. She saw the fear in his eyes. She could not blame him for it. She felt the same fear in her own heart. "Because the High Admiralty ordered it," she said, "and because someone has to know what is out there." Shook his head. "The conclave of 12,000 species declared this region forbidden 700 cycles ago. 700 cycles, Commander. That is longer than most civilizations have existed. They must have had a reason." "They did have a reason," said. She walked away from the window and moved toward the holographic map. With a gesture, she zoomed out, showing the full spiral arm of the galaxy. At the very edge where the stars grew thin, there was a black zone. No labels, no information, just emptiness. "This is Sector Omeganol," she said, "and the reason it was declared forbidden is because of what lives there." Scales rippled with nervousness. "Humans." The word hung in the air between them like poison. Nodded. "Humans." She had heard the stories all her life. Everyone had. They passed from species to species, from world to world, growing stranger and more terrible with each telling. Some said humans were monsters made of meat and bone, predators who hunted for sport. Others said they were demons who had crawled up from some hellish world and spread across the stars like a disease. The truth, she suspected, was both simpler and more complicated. "I have been reading the files," she said. "Everything the Conclave has on them, it is not much. Most of it is old, very old." "What does it say?" Pulled up a document on the holographic display. The text glowed in the dim room. "Homo," she read. "Origin world, Earth, 3rd planet of a yellow star in the outer spiral arm. Classification, Category 9 anomaly." Made a choking sound. "Category 9, that is the highest classification. That is reserved for existential threats." "Yes. But that makes no sense. I have seen pictures of them. They are soft. They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They cannot even see in the dark. How can they be Category 9? Scrolled through the document. "That is what makes them dangerous according to this. They are physically weak compared to most species. Slow, fragile. They should have died out millions of years ago on their harsh world, but they did not." She stopped at a section and read aloud. "Note, Human biology contains numerous anomalies that defy standard evolutionary models. They are pursuit predators, meaning they do not chase prey quickly. Instead, they follow it, for hours, for days, until the prey collapses from exhaustion. They call this persistence hunting. His eyes went wide. They chase things until they die of tiredness. Yes, and there is more, continued reading. Human bones, when broken, heal stronger than before. Their immune systems can adapt to fight new diseases within days. They can function with damaged organs. They can even survive the removal of certain organs entirely. They feel pain but can choose to ignore it through sheer willpower. That is not possible. It is documented. Pulled up another file. They also leak salt water from their eyes when they feel strong emotions. They call this crying. And they bare their teeth when they are happy. They call this smiling. Took a step back. They bare their teeth when happy, like a threat display. No, it means welcome, friendship, shook her head. Everything about them is backwards, wrong, they should not work, but they do. She closed the file and stood in silence for a moment. The ship continued to hum around them, pushing ever forward into the darkness. There is one more thing, she said finally, the Eth supremacy. Scales turned pale. I have heard of them. They were one of the great empires. They controlled 1,000 worlds. They controlled 3,000 worlds, corrected. 200 of our cycles ago they discovered Earth. The humans were primitive then. They had just begun to use machines. They were burning dead plants for energy, fighting wars with explosive projectiles. The Eth saw an easy conquest, fresh slaves, new resources. What happened? Turned back to the window. The stars looked so small out here, so far from home. They sent 12,000 ships, she said quietly. The largest fleet ever assembled, enough firepower to crack a planet in half. And no ship returned, no signal was ever received, the entire fleet simply vanished, paused, and within 50 cycles the Eth supremacy collapsed, not because of invasion. The humans never came for them, they just fell apart. Some say it was fear. Others say the humans did something to their minds, something that spread through their empire like a sickness. Was trembling now. Commander, please, tell me why we are doing this. Tell me why the High Admiralty would send us into that darkness. Turned to face him. She placed her hands on his shoulders, a gesture of comfort among their people. Because the silence has lasted too long, she said. 200 cycles without contact. 200 cycles of fear and rumors. The conclave is fracturing. Some species want to send another fleet, try to destroy the humans before they spread further. Others want to hide and hope they are never noticed. The High Admiralty believes neither option will work. So they sent us to die. They sent us to learn, released him and walked toward the door. We are a survey vessel, we carry no weapons, we pose no threat. If the humans are reasonable, they may speak with us. If they are not, she paused at the door, then at least the conclave will know for certain what it faces. She left him standing there in the observation deck, staring out at the endless dark. The next 3 cycles passed slowly. The crew of the Eternal Horizon grew quiet and nervous as they pushed deeper into the forbidden zone. Conversations died in the corridors. Meals were eaten in silence. Even the ship's AI seemed subdued, its usual cheerful announcements replaced by simple, emotionless reports. Spent most of her time in her quarters, reviewing every scrap of information she could find about humans. The more she read, the less sense they made. They had split the atom before they cured simple diseases. They had walked on their own moon using computers weaker than a child's calculator. They had created weapons capable of destroying their entire species, and then they had pointed those weapons at each other. They had fought 2 wars that covered their entire planet, not against invaders, against themselves. Millions of their own kind had died, cities had burned, and afterward they had rebuilt everything and continued living as if nothing had happened. HFY. The reports could not explain it. They simply recorded the facts and moved on, leaving to wonder. One passage stuck in her mind more than any other. It was from an old observation probe, one of the last to successfully return from human space before the silence began. The humans have a concept they call hope, the probe's AI had written. It is the belief that things will get better even when all evidence suggests otherwise. It is irrational, it is illogical, but it seems to be one of their primary driving forces. They hope even when they should despair. They fight even when they should surrender. They love even when they should hate. Read that passage many times. She did not understand it, but she felt somehow that it was important. On the fifth cycle past the Atlas boundary, they found the first sign of the humans. "Commander's voice crackled over the communication system. "You need to see this, now." Ran to the bridge. The entire crew was gathered there, staring at the main. What she saw made her stop in her tracks. A ship floated in the void ahead of them. It was massive, far larger than the eternal horizon. Its design was alien to her, all sharp angles and brutal efficiency, nothing like the graceful curves of ascendancy vessels. It was clearly Eth. And it was clearly dead. "It has been here for a very long time," said, his voice shaking. "Our sensors date the hull degradation at approximately 190 cycles." One of the invasion fleet whispered. "Yes, but Commander, that is not the worst part," pointed to the, "Look at how it is positioned." Looked. At first she did not understand. The ship was split open, its hull peeled back like the skin of a fruit. She could see inside into the corridors and chambers. Everything was frozen, preserved by the vacuum of space. Then she saw the bodies. Thousands of Eth corpses sat in their command chairs. Their hands were placed on dead consoles. Their eyes were closed. They had been arranged, posed, positioned with terrible care. "Someone put them back," said, her voice hollow. "Someone killed them and then put them back in their stations." "There is more," said. He zoomed toward the ship's hull. Words had been carved into the metal, enormous letters that stretched across the entire surface. Read them aloud. "We asked them to leave. They fired first. This is what remains of those who did not listen. We do not seek war, but we finish them." The bridge was silent. Someone behind began to cry softly, the quiet sound of terror. "The message is written in 17 languages," said, "including 3 that our AI cannot translate, but those 3. Our database suggests they might be extinct languages, languages of species that no longer exist." Stared at the dead ship, at the arranged bodies, at the carved warning. This was not the work of monsters. Monsters killed without thought, without purpose. This was something else. This was deliberate, careful, almost respectful. The humans had killed these invaders, but then they had taken the time to close their eyes, to return them to their stations, to write a warning in 17 languages so that anyone who found this ship would understand. They were not mindless killers. They were something far more dangerous. They were killers who remembered, who felt, who hoped that this warning would be enough, that no one else would have to die. "Commander," one of the officers said, "several crew members are requesting permission to turn back." Did not answer immediately. She was still staring at the dead ship. "If the humans wanted us dead," she said finally, "we would never have seen this. We would never have known what happened. This is a warning, not an attack, a warning. And if we ignore it..." Turned to face her crew. She saw the fear in their eyes. She felt it in her own heart. "Then we become like the Eth," she said, "and we end up the same way they did, arranged in our chairs, a warning for whoever comes next." She walked to the center of the bridge and stood tall, trying to look braver than she felt. "We continue forward," she said. "We are not here to fight. We are not here to conquer. We are here to learn. And if the humans are watching us, and I believe they are, then they already know that." The crew looked at her in silence. "Set a course around this wreck," ordered, "and mark its location. When we return home, the conclave will want to know about this. If we return home, she did not add. The ship began to move again, sliding past the ancient grave of the Eth invasion fleet. Stayed on the bridge, watching until the dead ship disappeared behind them. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, the humans were waiting. She did not know if they would find welcome or death. She only knew that she had to find out. The truth, whatever it was, could not possibly be worse than the endless fear, the endless silence, the endless not knowing. Or so she hoped. That word again, hope. Maybe, she thought, she was beginning to understand it after all. The eternal horizon pushed deeper into the darkness, carrying its crew of frightened explorers toward a destiny they could not imagine. Behind them, the galactic atlas ended. Ahead of them, something new waited. Something human. And throughout the ship, in quiet corners and dark corridors, the crew whispered to each other. They shared the stories they had grown up with, the myths, the legends, the rumors. They whispered about creatures who laughed in the face of death, who bled and cried and broke and healed, who had conquered their own world through sheer stubborn refusal to die. They whispered about monsters who wrote poetry, demons who sang lullabies to their children, predators who kept wolves as pets and called them good boys. They whispered and they prayed and they hoped. Ahead of them, the darkness waited. And somewhere in that darkness, humanity stirred. The eternal horizon traveled through the darkness for 15 more cycles. Each day felt longer than the last. The stars grew thin and scattered, like drops of water on a dry stone. The crew moved through the ship like ghosts, speaking in whispers, jumping at shadows. Understood their fear. She felt it herself, but she also knew that fear could destroy them faster than any enemy. So she called a meeting. The entire crew gathered in the main hall, 63 beings, all of them looking at her with wide, frightened eyes. They were surveyors, not soldiers, scientists, not warriors. They had signed up to map unknown worlds and discover new species. None of them had expected this. Stood before them and took a deep breath. "I know you are afraid," she said. "I am afraid too, but fear comes from not knowing. So today we are going to learn everything we can about where we are going. We are going to study the humans, understand them, and maybe when we finally meet them, we will not be so afraid." She activated the holographic display behind her. A planet appeared, blue and green and white, spinning slowly in the light. "This is Earth," she said. "The human. It is a small planet mostly covered in water. The gravity is slightly stronger than what we are used to. The atmosphere contains oxygen, nitrogen, and small amounts of other gases. It is, by all accounts, a harsh and dangerous world." She zoomed in on the planet's surface. The crew leaned forward, curious despite their fear. 70% of the surface is water, continued, but not safe water. Their oceans are filled with predators, creatures with hundreds of teeth, creatures that can swallow a small ship whole, creatures that glow in the dark to attract prey. Someone in the crowd made a sound of disgust. "The land is no safer," said. "Extreme temperatures, violent storms, earthquakes that can level cities, volcanoes that can darken the sky for years, and the wildlife is equally deadly. Venomous insects, poisonous plants, large predators that hunt in packs." She paused and looked at her crew. "This is the world that made the humans. They evolved here. They survived here. For millions of years, they competed with these dangers and won. By the time they developed civilization, they had already become the most dangerous things on their planet." Navigator raised his hand. "Commander, how did they become so dominant? They have no natural weapons, no claws, no venom. Their senses are poor compared to many other species." Nodded. "A good question, and the answer is what makes them truly terrifying." She pulled up a new image. It showed a group of humans, primitive ones, chasing a large four-legged animal across a grassy plain. "This is called persistence hunting," she said. Humans are not the fastest creatures, they are not the strongest, but they are among the most enduring. Their bodies can run for hours without stopping. They can sweat to cool themselves, something few other creatures can do, and they can track prey by reading marks on the ground and broken plants. The image changed, showing the chase continue. The animal was faster, but the humans kept following. The prey runs away, explained. It is faster so it escapes easily, but then it has to stop and rest, and the humans catch up. The prey runs again, escapes again, rests again, and the humans catch up again. This continues for hours, sometimes for days. Eventually the prey becomes too exhausted to run. It collapses, and the humans walk up to it and kill it. The room was silent. They do not chase their food, said quietly. They follow it, patiently, endlessly, until it cannot run anymore, until it is so tired that it simply gives up and waits to die. An engineer named Sorrel spoke up. That is horrifying. Yes, agreed. And it explains something important about their psychology. Humans do not give up, ever. They are biologically incapable of it. Their bodies are designed to keep going long after they should have stopped, and their minds work the same way. She pulled up more files, more images. The crew watched in fascinated horror as she explained. Human bones broke and healed stronger than before. Human muscles torn during exercise rebuilt themselves thicker and more powerful. Human children fell down hundreds of times while learning to walk, and they got back up every single time. Humans could lose arms, legs, eyes, and continue living. They could have organs removed and survive. They could take poisons into their bodies for recreation and develop tolerance to them over time. Their cells are constantly dying and being replaced, said. Every 7 cycles, almost every part of their body has been rebuilt from scratch. They are not the same beings they were before, and yet they maintain their memories, their personalities, their sense of self. They are ships that replace every plank but remain the same ship. She moved on to their history. This was where things became truly strange. Humans are a social species, she said. They form groups, tribes, nations, and these groups fight each other, constantly. The images showed battlefields, cities in flames, weapons of increasing power and destruction. This is what they call war, explained. They have been fighting each other since before they developed writing. They have created countless ways to kill, swords, guns, bombs, poisons, diseases, and they have used all of them on each other. She paused on an image of a massive mushroom-shaped cloud rising into the sky. This is called a nuclear weapon. The humans developed it approximately 300 of their years ago. It uses the energy inside atoms to create an explosion large enough to destroy an entire city in an instant. And when they first created this weapon, when they saw what it could do, what do you think they did? The crew stared at the image in horror. They built more of them, said. Thousands of them, enough to destroy their entire world many times over. And then they pointed these weapons at each other. For decades, they lived with the knowledge that their civilization could end at any moment, that one mistake, one miscalculation could kill everyone. Someone in the crowd asked, did they ever use them again? Yes, twice. Pulled up images of ruined cities. They dropped 2 of these weapons on their own kind. Hundreds of thousands died in an instant, and this was not even during their largest war. This was near the end of a smaller conflict. The room was completely silent now. The crew looked at the images with expressions of disbelief and terror. But here is the strangest part, continued. After all of this, after all the wars and weapons and death, the humans did not destroy themselves. They survived, they rebuilt, they kept going. She changed the image to something different. A spacecraft, primitive but functional, sitting on a gray, rocky surface. A human in a white suit stood next to it, a flag planted in the ground. While they were pointing nuclear weapons at each other, threatening mutual destruction, they also did this. They went to their moon, not for resources, not for territory, simply because it was there, because they wanted to know what it was like. She showed more images: spacecraft flying past giant planets, robots rolling across red deserts, telescopes staring into the depths of space. They looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there, even while they fought each other on the ground, even while they built weapons that could end their species. They never stopped wondering, never stopped exploring. Turned off the display and faced her crew directly. "This is what we are dealing with," she said. "A species that creates nuclear weapons and moon landings at the same time. A species that writes poetry about love while building machines of war. A species that cannot seem to stop fighting itself but also cannot stop reaching for the stars." She walked among her crew, looking at each of them in turn. "They are not monsters. Monsters are simple. Monsters kill and destroy without thought. The humans are something far more complicated. They are capable of the greatest cruelty and the greatest kindness, the deepest hatred and the deepest love. They contain all of these things at once, and they somehow make it work." An officer named raised her hand. "Commander, you said they are capable of kindness, but everything you have shown us is violence and war. Where is the kindness?" Smiled slightly. It was the question she had been waiting for. "Let me tell you about something the humans call the Voyager probes," she said. She pulled up a new image. A small spacecraft, golden and strange, drifting through the void. When the humans first learned to send objects into space, they built 2 of these. The Voyagers. They sent them outward past their planets, into the darkness between stars. These probes would travel forever, going further and further from Earth, never returning. She zoomed in on the spacecraft. Attached to its side was a golden disk. The humans knew that space was vast and empty. They knew the chances of these probes being found by anyone were almost zero, but they put messages on them anyway. Music, sounds from their world, images of their people, greetings in dozens of languages, mathematical formulas, maps showing how to find their planet. His voice grew soft. They sent these messages into the void not because they expected an answer. They sent them because of hope, because they wanted to believe that someday, somewhere, someone would find these probes and know that humanity had existed, that they had reached out into the darkness and said, "We are here, we are real, and we wanted to say hello." The crew was silent. "That is the other side of humanity," said. "The side that hopes, the side that dreams, the side that looks at the endless darkness between stars and thinks, maybe someone out there will hear us." She turned off the display completely and stood in the center of the room. "The humans are dangerous. I will not lie to you about that. They have proven it many times, but they are also capable of something rare and precious. They can choose what they want to be. They can choose kindness over cruelty, peace over war, love over hate. They do not always make the right choice, but they always have the choice." Looked around at her crew. They seemed less afraid now. Still nervous, still uncertain, but no longer paralyzed with terror. "We are going to meet them," she said. "And when we do, we will not come as enemies or conquerors. We will come as what we are: explorers, scientists, seekers of knowledge. We will show them that we are curious, not hostile, interested, not afraid." She paused. "And maybe, just maybe, they will show us the side of themselves that sends golden records into the darkness, the side that hopes." The meeting ended and the crew returned to their duties, but something had changed. The whispers in the corridors were different now. Instead of fear, there was curiosity. Instead of terror, there was wonder. Returned to her quarters and continued her research. She read about human art and music, about their religions and philosophies, about the stories they told each other and the values they tried to live by. She read about their concept of heroism, how they celebrated those who risked their lives to save others, how they told stories about ordinary people who did extraordinary things in moments of crisis. She read about their capacity for friendship, how they formed bonds with each other that lasted entire lifetimes, how they would sacrifice everything for the people they loved. She read about their relationship with animals, how they had taken wolves, vicious predators, and turned them into loyal companions over thousands of years, how they kept creatures in their homes not for food or labor but simply for company, how they mourned when these animals died and remembered them long after. She read about their response to disaster, how when tragedy struck, humans from all over the world would send help, food, medicine, money, workers. They would travel vast distances to assist strangers they had never met and would never see again. Why, the reports could not fully explain it. The humans themselves often struggled to explain it. They just felt compelled to help. It was part of who they were. Read until her eyes grew tired and her mind began to blur. Then she sat back and stared at the ceiling of her quarters. The humans were contradictions wrapped in paradoxes. They were everything at once, cruel and kind, fearful and brave, destructive and creative. They made no sense. And yet somehow they worked. They had survived their dangerous world. They had survived their own weapons. They had survived each other. And now they sat at the edge of known space, watching and waiting, their true nature hidden behind centuries of silence and fear. What would they be when the eternal horizon finally reached them? Did not know. Perhaps no one could know until the moment came. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. In her dreams, she saw a golden disk spinning through darkness. She heard strange music playing, sounds unlike anything she had ever heard before. She saw images of humans, laughing, crying, working, playing, living. And at the end of the dream, she saw one of them look directly at her, a human female with dark eyes and a soft smile. The human raised her hand in greeting. "We were hoping you would come," the human said. "We have been waiting for so long." Woke with a start, her heart was pounding, her scales were slick with sweat. It was just a dream, just her mind processing everything she had learned. But somehow, she felt like it was also a promise. The humans were waiting, and they wanted to be found. The question was, what would happen when they were? Got out of bed and went to the observation deck. The stars outside were thin and scattered now, faint points of light in the endless dark. Somewhere ahead, beyond the reach of her sensors, was Earth. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and made a decision. She would not approach them with fear. She would not approach them as prey. She would approach them as an equal, a fellow explorer, a fellow dreamer. And she would hope that it was enough. The word felt strange in her mind. Hope. Such a human concept, but maybe she thought that was exactly why she needed it. The eternal horizon flew on through the darkness, carrying its crew of explorers toward destiny. And somewhere ahead, the humans waited. Patient, enduring, watching. Just as they had always done. 20 cycles into the forbidden zone, the eternal horizon found the second monument. It was not another dead ship this time. It was something far stranger. Navigator spotted it first on the long-range sensors. "Commander," he said, his voice tight with confusion, "there is something ahead, something large, but I cannot tell what it is." Moved to the sensor station and looked at the readings. He was right. The object was massive, nearly a kilometer across, but its shape made no sense. It was not a ship. It was not a station. It was not a natural formation. "Take us closer," she ordered, slowly. The eternal horizon crept forward through the darkness. As they approached, the object began to resolve on and what they saw made the entire bridge go silent. It was a sculpture. A massive sculpture floating in the void between stars. It showed a hand reaching upward, fingers spread wide, as if trying to grasp something just out of reach. The hand was made of some kind of metal, polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the distant starlight. At the base of the sculpture, where the wrist would be, there was a platform, and on the platform, arranged in neat rows, were more ships. Dead ships, thousands of them, Those are ETH vessels, whispered. More of the invasion fleet. Nodded slowly. The ships were arranged with the same terrible care as the first monument. Each one positioned precisely, each one preserved in the vacuum, each one holding the remains of its crew. But this was different. This was not just a warning. This was art. "The hand," said an officer named, her voice barely audible. "It is reaching toward the conclave, toward known space, toward home." Understood. The message was clear. The humans had taken the invaders who came to destroy them and turned them into a message, a sculpture that spoke without words. "You reached for us. You tried to take us. And now your reaching hand floats in the darkness forever, a reminder of what happens when you grasp for things that do not belong to you." "There is something written on the platform," said he. The image. Words appeared, carved into the metal in dozens of languages. "They came as conquerors. We offered peace. They chose war. This is their legacy now. Let it stand for all time as a question. What will you choose?" Read the words 3 times. Each time they struck her differently. The first time, she felt fear. This was the work of a species that could destroy an armada and then spend time and resources turning the wreckage into art. That required a level of power and patience that was terrifying. The second time, she felt something like admiration. The humans had not simply destroyed their enemies. They had created something meaningful from the destruction, something that asked a question rather than making a threat. The third time she felt hope. The question at the end was genuine. What will you choose? It was an invitation, an offer of peace wrapped in a demonstration of strength. "They want us to choose differently," she said aloud. "They want us to be better than the ETH." The crew looked at her, uncertain. "We keep moving," said. "And when we meet them, we show them that we have already made our choice." The eternal horizon left the sculpture behind and continued toward Earth. But the crew could not stop talking about what they had seen. In the dining hall, in the corridors, in whispered conversations during night shifts, they discussed the hand reaching toward the stars. Some thought it was beautiful, others thought it was horrifying, most thought it was both. Spent her time preparing. She reviewed first contact protocols. She practiced greeting phrases in the human languages she had learned from the old files. She studied their facial expressions, their body language, their customs. She learned that humans valued direct eye contact as a sign of respect. She learned that they shook hands when meeting, a gesture that originally existed to show they held no weapons. She learned that they smiled when happy and frowned when sad, the opposite of most species she knew. And she learned about their concept of hospitality. When humans welcomed strangers into their homes, they offered food and drink. They made their guests comfortable. They treated them as honored visitors. If the humans saw the eternal horizon as a guest rather than an invader, perhaps everything would be fine. If they saw them as an invader, tried not to think about that. On the 30th cycle, they found the third monument. This one was different from the others. There were no dead ships, no arranged bodies, no carved warnings. Instead, there was a beacon. It floated in space, a small device barely larger than a supply crate. It pulsed with a soft blue light, rhythmic and steady, like a heartbeat. "It is transmitting something," reported. "A signal, very simple, just a series of tones." "Can you decode it?" Worked at his console for several minutes. Then he looked up, his expression strange. "It is music," he said. Frowned. "Music." "Yes, Commander, human music. A simple melody repeating over and over. And underneath the melody there is a message in mathematical notation. It says, 'Welcome.'" The bridge went very quiet. "They knew we were coming," said slowly. "They put this here for us to find." "Not just for us," replied. "For anyone. Anyone who made it this far without turning back. Anyone who saw the monuments and kept going. This is their way of saying, 'You passed the test.'" She listened to the melody playing through the bridge speakers. It was simple and beautiful, rising and falling like waves on a shore. It spoke of hope and welcome and new beginnings. "They are not monsters," she said softly. "Whatever else they are not monsters." The crew listened to the music in silence. Some of them closed their eyes. Others wiped tears from their faces. The fear that had gripped them for so long was finally beginning to fade. "Continue on course," ordered, "and keep that music playing." The eternal horizon flew on, the human melody echoing through its corridors. 5 cycles later, they reached the edge of the human system. Stood on the bridge, watching the yellow star they had been approaching for so long was now clearly visible, a warm point of light surrounded by its family of planets. "There it is," said, "the Sol system, human space." "Any signs of defense platforms?" asked. "Weapon stations, patrol ships?" Checked his sensors. "Nothing, Commander, the approach is clear." That surprised her. After everything she had read, after the monuments and the warnings, she had expected to find a fortress, ships patrolling every approach, weapons aimed at every angle, but there was nothing. Either the humans were supremely confident in their defenses, or they did not feel the need for obvious displays of force. Both possibilities were unsettling. "Take us in," ordered. "Standard approach, slow and steady." The eternal horizon entered the human system. They passed the outer planets first, giants of gas and ice that dwarfed their ship. Then the rocky inner planets, small and dense and strange. And finally they saw Earth. It hung in space like a jewel. Blue oceans, green lands, white clouds swirling across its surface. It was beautiful in a way that had not expected. All the stories about human violence, human warfare, human destruction she had imagined there would be and ruined. But it was not, it was alive, vibrant, healthy. "The readings are strange," reported. "There is a lot of artificial activity on the surface and in orbit, but I cannot detect any weapon systems, no military satellites, no defense platforms." "That cannot be right," said. "They destroyed the entire ETH fleet. They must have weapons." "Oh, they have weapons," said quietly. "But they have chosen not to show them. They are testing us, seeing what we will do when we think they are vulnerable." She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. "Open a communication channel, all frequencies. Let them know we are here." Nodded and worked his console. A light flashed, indicating that the channel was open. Stepped forward and spoke. "This is Commander of the Ascendancy Survey Vessel Eternal Horizon. We come in peace. We carry no weapons. Our mission is exploration and understanding. We have traveled far to reach you. We hope to speak with you, to learn about you, and to share knowledge between our peoples." She paused, trying to remember the human phrase she had practiced. "We come as friends, not as enemies. We choose peace." She motioned for it to close the channel. Then they waited. Minutes passed. The bridge was silent. Everyone stared at waiting for something to happen. "Commander," said suddenly, "I am detecting a signal, incoming from the planet." "Put it through." The speakers crackled. Then a voice filled the bridge, a human voice. It was warm and calm, with a hint of amusement underneath. "Ascendancy Vessel Eternal Horizon, this is Earth Orbital Command. We have been tracking you since you entered Sector Omeganol. We observed your passage past the monuments. We noted that you did not fire weapons or attempt hostile action. We heard your message." The voice paused. "We appreciate your choice. Not everyone makes it this far. Not everyone would choose peace after seeing what you have seen. We respect your courage." Another pause. "You are cleared to approach Earth. Please maintain your current course. A guide ship will meet you and escort you to a designated meeting area. Do not deviate from the path provided. Do not power up any systems that could be interpreted as hostile. If you follow these instructions, you will be welcomed as guests." The voice grew slightly softer. "We have been alone for a long time, Commander. We have been waiting for someone who would come to us with open hands instead of closed fists. We hope you are what you seem to be. We really do." The transmission ended. The bridge erupted in cheers. Officers hugged each other. Some wept openly. The tension that had built over 30 cycles finally released in a wave of joy and relief. Did not celebrate. She stood still, processing what she had heard. The humans had been watching them the entire time. Every moment since they entered the forbidden zone, human eyes had been on them. The monuments, the music, the seemingly undefended approach, it had all been a test, and they had passed. But the test was not over. The humans were welcoming them, but they were also being cautious. The instructions about not deviating, not powering up weapons, those were warnings wrapped in polite language. The humans hoped they were what they seemed to be. That meant they were not certain yet. Navigator said, "Follow their instructions exactly. Not 1 degree of deviation, not one unusual power reading. We will show them exactly what we are." "Yes, Commander." The eternal horizon continued toward Earth, following the path the humans had provided. An hour later, a small ship appeared on the sensors, approaching from the planet. It was sleek and elegant, designed for speed rather than combat. The guide ship took position ahead of them and began leading them toward a large station orbiting Earth. The station was huge, a wheel spinning slowly in space, lights glowing from 1,000 windows. "Welcome to Gateway Station," a new voice said over the comm. "Please dock at Port 17. Representatives are waiting to meet you." Looked at her crew. They looked back at her with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "This is it," she said. "Everything we have worked for, everything we have risked. In a few minutes, we will be the first members of the Ascendancy to meet humans in person, the first to speak with them, the first to truly know them." She paused. "Remember what we learned. They value honesty. They value courage. They value those who choose peace when war would be easier. We will show them all of these things, and we will show them that the conclave, that our people, are worthy of their respect." The crew nodded. "Prepare for docking," ordered. The eternal horizon slid toward the massive station, small and fragile against its bulk. But inside, her crew stood ready. They had crossed the edge of the known galaxy. They had passed through the darkness. They had seen the monuments and heard the music and answered the question. Now at last they would meet the humans. And everything would change. Watch through the window as the station grew larger. Somewhere in there, behind those lights, the humans waited. Creatures of contradiction, builders and destroyers, warriors and dreamers. She did not know what would happen next. But she was no longer afraid to find out. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thunk. The airlocks hissed. And ahead, on the other side of a door, the future waited. Human and alien, face to face at last. After 200 years of silence. After countless myths and legends and fears. The truth was finally within reach. Walked toward the airlock. Behind her, her crew followed. And somewhere deep in her chest, in the place where her species kept their courage, a small flame burned. Hope. She had learned it from the humans without even meeting them. And now she would find out if it was justified. The airlock door slid open and stepped into human space for the first time. The corridor beyond was wide and well lit. The walls were a soft gray color, decorated with paintings and plants in small containers. Everything was clean and organized, but not cold. There was warmth here, life. And there were humans. 5 of them stood in a group at the end of the corridor. They were smaller than had expected, shorter than her by nearly half a meter. Their skin came in different shades, from pale pink to deep brown. Their hair grew in different colors and styles. Their eyes were small but bright, watching her with obvious curiosity. None of them carried weapons. None of them wore armor. They were dressed in simple clothes, practical and unremarkable. Had seen images of humans before. She had studied their biology and their history, but seeing them in person was different. They looked so fragile, soft, breakable. And yet she knew what they had done to the Eth fleet, what they had built from the wreckage, what they were capable of when pushed. She walked toward them, her crew following behind. With each step she reminded herself of what she had learned. Eye contact meant respect, smiles meant welcome, open hands meant peace. When she reached the group, she stopped and forced herself to meet the eyes of the human at the front. It was a female, older than the others judging by the lines on her face and the gray in her hair, but her eyes were sharp and alert, full of intelligence and something else, something warm. "Commander," the human said. Her voice was the same one from the earlier transmission. "I am Director Sarah. On behalf of Earth and humanity, welcome." The human extended her hand. Had prepared for this. She reached out with her own hand, 3 fingers meeting 5, and they shook. The human's grip was firm but not aggressive. "Director," said, "thank you for receiving us. We have traveled far to meet you." "We know," said. A smile crossed her face. "We have been watching. You showed great courage, Commander. Many would have turned back after the first monument, even more after the second, but you kept coming." "We had to know the truth." Nodded slowly. "The truth, yes, that is something we value highly." She released hand and gestured toward the corridor behind her. "Please come with us. We have prepared a place where we can talk, and we have many questions for each other." They walked through the station together, tried to observe everything without being obvious about it. The corridors were busy with humans going about their business. Some stopped to stare at the alien visitors. Others waved and smiled before continuing on their way. Children ran past, laughing and playing. They did not seem afraid of the aliens at all. One small human, barely tall enough to reach waist, stopped and stared up at her with wide eyes. "You have scales," the child said, "like a fish, but you walk." Before could respond, an adult human rushed over and gently pulled the child away, apologizing for the interruption, but found herself smiling, or trying to, in the human way. "Your young are not afraid of us," she observed. "Why would they be?" replied. "They have not learned to fear yet. They see something new and interesting, not something dangerous." She paused. "Children are honest. They show us who we could be if we let go of our fears." They continued walking. The station was larger than had realized, a small city floating in space. They passed markets where goods were traded, parks where trees and grass grew under artificial sunlight, restaurants where the smell of food made crews stir with interest. Finally, they reached a large room with windows looking out at Earth below. The planet filled most of the view, blue and green and beautiful. Tables had been set up, covered with food and drink. "Please sit," said. "Eat, rest. You have come a long way and we have much to discuss." And her crew sat at the tables. They looked at the food uncertainly. None of them knew what was safe to eat. Noticed and smiled. "We analyzed your biology from the recordings of your approach," she said. "Everything on these tables is safe for your species. We would not poison our guests." She paused, and her smile turned slightly mischievous. "Although I should warn you about the small red fruits, they are called strawberries. They are not dangerous, but they are very sweet. Some species find them overwhelming." Navigator reached for a strawberry and bit into it. His eyes went wide. This is amazing," he said. "It tastes like joy feels." Laughed. It was a warm sound, genuine and infectious. Several of the humans laughed with her and even felt something like amusement. "I am glad you like them," said. "Please enjoy the meal, and when you are ready we can begin our conversation." They ate and drank. The food was strange but delicious. There were soft breads and sharp cheeses, fruits of many colors, vegetables roasted and seasoned, and something dark and bitter that called coffee, which found unpleasant but several of her crew seemed to enjoy. When the meal was finished, leaned forward in her chair. "Now," she said, "you came here for truth. Ask your questions, Commander. We will answer what we can. Took a deep breath. She had prepared so many questions, but now, sitting here across from actual humans, only one seemed to matter. Why did you destroy the Eth fleet? His expression grew serious. She was quiet for a long moment. Because they gave us no choice, she said finally. They came to our system with weapons ready. They broadcast demands for our surrender. When we tried to negotiate, they destroyed one of our cities as a demonstration of power. 12 million people died in that attack. The room went very quiet. We did not want war, continued. We never wanted war. But when someone attacks your home, when they kill your people, when they make it clear that they will not stop until you submit or die, what choice do you have? Nodded slowly. And after you destroyed them, the monuments. The monuments were a choice, said. We could have hidden the wreckage. We could have erased all evidence that the Eth ever existed, but we decided to remember instead, to create something that would last, something that would tell the story to whoever came next. She met's eyes. The hand reaching toward the stars. That was my grandmother's idea, actually. She said that the Eth had come to us with grasping hands, trying to take what was not theirs, so we would freeze that moment forever, a hand reaching for something it can never touch. It is a powerful message. It was meant to be, leaned back in her chair. But it was also meant to be a question. What will you choose? We wanted to give others a chance to be different, to show that they did not have to repeat the Eth's mistakes. And if they did? His expression did not change, but something in her eyes hardened just for a moment. Then they would become monuments too. The words hung in the air. Understood now why the conclave had declared this region forbidden. It was not just fear of human violence. It was fear of human judgment. They had created a test that every visitor would have to pass, and the penalty for failure was eternal. You are afraid of us, said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. He seemed surprised by his own words, but he continued. The monuments, the warnings, the watching, you are afraid that others will be like the Eth, that they will attack without reason. Was quiet for a moment, then she nodded. Yes, she said, we are afraid. We have been afraid for a long time. She looked out the window at Earth. Our history is full of violence. We have done terrible things to each other and to our world. We know what we are capable of, and we know that there are others out there who might be even worse. She turned back to the alien crew. When the Eth came, we learned that we were not alone in the universe, but we also learned that the universe could be cruel, that there were species out there who would destroy us without a second thought. So we prepared. We built defenses. We created weapons that even we are afraid of. And we waited. 200 years, said softly. 200 years, agreed. 200 years of silence. 200 years of wondering if anyone would ever come in peace. 200 years of building monuments and hoping that someone would finally choose differently. She reached across the table and took his hand. And then you came. You saw the first monument and kept going. You saw the second and still did not turn back. You found our beacon, heard our music, and continued toward us. You sent a message of peace instead of firing weapons. You asked to talk instead of demanding surrender. Her eyes were bright now, shining with something that did not immediately recognize. It took her a moment to understand. It was relief, deep, profound relief that had been building for 2 centuries. Do you understand what that means to us? Asked. Do you understand what it feels like to finally meet someone who comes with open hands? Found that she did understand. She had felt the same thing when the human voice first welcomed them. The same weight lifting. The same hope finally finding solid ground. We came here expecting monsters, admitted. The stories we heard were terrifying. Creatures who could not be killed. Predators who never stopped hunting. Destroyers who erased entire civilizations. Nodded, and what did you find? Looked around the room, at the paintings on the walls, at the plants growing in corners, at the humans sitting with her crew, sharing food and drink and conversation, at with her gray hair and warm eyes and hopeful smile. I found people, said. Complicated people, dangerous people maybe, but people nonetheless. Smiled. That is what we are, nothing more, nothing less. She squeezed his hand gently. We have done terrible things. We carry the weight of our history with us every day, but we also carry hope. We believe that we can be better, that we can choose kindness over cruelty, peace over war, love over hate. How asked, how do you hold all of that inside you at once, the violence and the kindness, the fear and the hope? Thought about the question for a long moment. Because we have to, she said finally. Because that is what it means to be human. We are not perfect, we never will be, but we keep trying. We keep reaching for something better even when we fail, even when we fall, even when everything seems hopeless. She gestured toward the window, toward Earth. See that planet down there? That is our home. We nearly destroyed it several times. We poisoned its air and water. We cut down its forests. We killed so many species that we could not even count them all. And yet, it is still alive, still beautiful. Because when we finally understood what we were doing, we changed. We chose differently. Stared at the blue planet. It is healing, she said. Yes, slowly, painfully, but it is healing. Because we decided that we wanted it to heal, because we finally chose to be caretakers instead of destroyers. Stood and walked to the window. She placed her hand on the glass, looking down at her. That is the human story, she said. Not the monuments or the weapons or the wars. Those are part of it, yes, but they are not the whole story. The real story is this: we make mistakes, terrible mistakes, and then we try to fix them. We fall down, and then we get back up. We hurt each other, and then we learn to love. She turned back to, We are not monsters, Commander. We are just people who are still learning how to be better. And we hope, we desperately hope, that we are not alone in that struggle. The room was silent. Even the other humans had stopped talking, listening to their director speak. Stood and walked to join at the window. She looked down at Earth, at the clouds swirling over blue oceans, at the green continents where billions of humans lived and worked and dreamed. You are not alone, she said. Looked at her with surprise. The conclave has 1,000 species, continued. All of them have made mistakes, all of them have histories they are not proud of, wars they wish they had not fought, crimes they wish they could undo. She paused. But all of them are still here, still trying, still hopping. She turned to face directly. That is why I came here, not just to learn about humans, but to tell you that you are not the only ones reaching for something better. There are others who share your struggle, others who understand what it means to fall and get back up. His eyes filled with tears, not sad tears, understood now, happy tears, relieved tears. We waited so long, whispered, so long. I know, said, so did we. They stood together at the window, two very different beings from two very different worlds, looking down at the blue planet below. And for the first time in 200 years, neither of them felt alone. Behind them, the rest of the room began to stir. Humans and aliens talked together, shared food, laughed at jokes that neither side fully understood. It was messy, awkward, imperfect. It was exactly what first contact should be. Not an invasion, not a conquest, just people meeting people trying to understand each other, hopping for the best. Watched her crew interact with the humans. She saw Navigator explaining star maps to a curious human scientist. She saw Engineer Sorrel examining a human device with obvious fascination. She saw Officer laughing at something a human had said. This was possible, she realized. This connection, this friendship, this future where humans and aliens worked together, it was actually possible. All it had taken was someone willing to choose peace. Seemed to read her thoughts. This is just the beginning, she said. There is so much we can learn from each other, So much we can build together, but it will take time and trust and patience. We have time, replied, and trust can be built, and patience. She allowed herself a small smile. Patience is something we have learned on this long journey. Laughed softly. Then let us begin. And they did. The Eternal Horizon stayed at Gateway Station for 30 cycles. During that time, learned more about humans than she had ever thought possible. She walked through their cities on Earth. She ate their food and listened to their music and read their books. She attended their gatherings and heard their stories and watched their children play. And with every passing day, she understood them a little more. The humans were everything the stories had said, and nothing like them at all. They were violent, yes. Their history was soaked in blood, but that violence was not mindless. It came from fear and desperation and the terrible choices that life sometimes forced upon them. When they fought for reasons, even if those reasons were sometimes wrong. They were predators, yes. They had hunted and killed to survive, but they had also learned to care for other creatures. They kept animals in their homes as family members. They created parks where wild things could live safely. They spent enormous resources protecting species that would otherwise disappear forever. They were dangerous, yes. Their weapons could crack planets and poison stars, but they kept those weapons hidden. They did not wave them around or use them to threaten. They preferred to talk first, to negotiate, to find solutions that did not involve killing. They were, in the end, simply people, flawed and foolish and often confused, but also brave and kind and full of love. On her last day on the station, sat with Director on a balcony overlooking Earth. The sun was setting over the planet, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink and gold. "It is beautiful," said. "It is," agreed. "Every time I see it, I remember why we fight so hard to protect it, why we do the things we do." Turned to look at her. Over the past 30 cycles, she had come to consider a friend. The human had been patient and kind, answering endless questions and sharing stories of her own life. She had shown the best of humanity and had been honest about the worst. "May I ask you something personal?" said. "Of course." "The fear you spoke of, the fear that made you build monuments and weapons and walls, do you still feel it?" Was quiet for a long moment. She watched the sun sink lower, the colors deepening. "Yes," she said finally, "I still feel it. I think we always will. Fear does not go away just because you wish it to. It stays with you. It becomes part of who you are." "Then how do you live with it?" Smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was strength in it. "We learn to carry it," she said. "We do not let it control us. We do not let it make our choices for us. We feel the fear and then we choose to act anyway. That is what courage means, not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it." Thought about her own journey, the terror she had felt when they crossed into the forbidden zone, the horror of the monuments, the uncertainty of first contact. "I was afraid," she admitted. "When I saw your monuments, when I read about your history, when I first met you face to face, I was terrified. And yet here you are. Here I am." Reached out and took his hand. "That is what makes you worthy of respect," she said. "Not your lack of fear, your choice to keep going despite it. You could have turned back at any point, many would have, but you kept coming because you believed that understanding was more important than safety. That connection was worth the risk." She squeezed his hand gently. "That is exactly what we hoped someone would do. That is exactly what we were waiting for." They sat together in silence, watching the sun disappear below the curve of the earth. The stars began to appear, thousands of tiny points of light scattered across the darkness. "When I return home," said, "I will tell them the truth about you, not the myths or the legends, the truth." "What will you say?" Thought carefully before answering. "I will tell them that humanity is dangerous, that you have weapons that could destroy us and the will to use them if necessary. that you should not be underestimated or threatened or pushed into a corner. Nodded slowly. And then, continued, I will tell them that humanity is kind, that you create art and music and poetry, that you love your children and care for your animals and protect your world, that you welcome strangers into your homes and share your food and your stories. She paused. I will tell them that you are complicated, that you contain both light and darkness, cruelty and compassion, violence and gentleness, that you are capable of the best and the worst things imaginable, and that, despite all of this, you keep trying to be better. Was silent, her eyes glistened in the starlight. I will tell them, said, that humanity is worth knowing, worth befriending, worth trusting if they earn that trust. I will tell them that the monsters they feared were never monsters at all, just people trying to find their way through the darkness. Will they believe you? Smiled, some will not, but I will keep telling the truth until enough of them listen, until the fear begins to fade, until the silence finally ends. She looked out at the stars. You waited 200 years for someone to come in peace. My people have feared you for just as long, but fear cannot last forever. Eventually, someone has to take the first step. Someone has to be brave enough to reach out. She turned back to, I will be that someone, and when I need help, when I need proof that my words are true, I will call on you, and you will answer. It was not a question. Smiled. We will answer, she said. We will always answer. That is who we are. They sat together until the stars filled the sky, two friends from two worlds, united by hope. The next morning, the eternal horizon prepared to depart. The crew gathered in the docking bay, saying farewell to the humans they had come to know. There were embraces and handshakes and promises to stay in touch. There were gifts exchanged, crystals from the Ascendancy for human jewelry, human books for alien libraries. Navigator had become particularly close to a human scientist named James. They exchanged contact information and made plans to collaborate on research into stellar navigation. As they said goodbye, James pressed something small into his hand. What is this? Asked, looking at the tiny red object. A strawberry seed, James said with a grin. Plant it when you get home, grow your own joy. Laughed, a sound that had rarely heard from him before this journey. Engineer Sorrel had spent most of her time studying human technology. She carried a small device that the humans had given her, a music player loaded with thousands of songs. When I feel afraid, she told, I will listen to this. I will remember that the creatures who made such beautiful sounds cannot be monsters. Officer had learned to cook human food. She carried recipes and spices, planning to open a restaurant when she returned home. Human cuisine, she insisted, would change the galaxy. One by one, the crew boarded the ship, was the last to go. Stood at the airlock with her, holding a small package. A gift, said, from humanity to the Conclave. Open it when you are back in known space. Took the package carefully. What is it? Smiled mysteriously. A story, the most human thing we could give you. They shook hands one final time. Thank you, said, for everything. Thank you, replied, for choosing peace, for being brave, for giving us hope. She stepped back from the airlock. Safe travels, Commander. May your journey be swift and your return joyful. And when you come back, and you will come back, we will be here, waiting, ready to welcome you home. The airlock closed, the docking clamps released, and the eternal horizon pulled away from Gateway Station, beginning its long journey back to known space. Stood at the observation window, watching Earth shrink behind them. The blue planet grew smaller and smaller, until it was just another point of light among millions. But it would never be just another light to her. It would always be special. It would always be the place where she learned what courage really meant. The journey home took 40 cycles. The crew spent the time processing everything they had learned, organizing their notes and recordings, preparing their reports. And they talked, endlessly, about humans and Earth and the future that now seemed possible. When they finally crossed back into known space, when the galactic atlas showed familiar stars once again, opens package. Inside was a book, an old book with worn pages and a faded cover. The title was in a human language, but a translation had been included. The Little Prince. A note was attached. This is one of our most beloved stories. It is about a pilot who crashes in a desert and meets a child from another world. It is about love and loss and what truly matters in life. It taught generations of humans that the most important things are invisible to the eye. We hope it teaches you the same. Read the book in one sitting. It was simple, written for children, but there was wisdom in its pages that struck her deeply. One passage stayed with her. You become responsible forever for what you have tamed. She thought about the humans, about how they had tamed wolves and made them into friends, about how they tamed their own violence and made it into something controlled, about how they had tamed their fear and made it into courage. And she thought about herself, about how this journey had changed her, about how she had come here expecting monsters and found people instead. She had been tamed, she realized, by human kindness, by human hope, by the simple act of sharing food and stories and dreams. And that meant she was responsible now, responsible for carrying their truth back to the conclave, responsible for changing the way her people saw the universe, responsible for building the bridge between two civilizations. It was a heavy burden, but it was also an honor. When the eternal horizon finally reached home, crowds gathered to greet them. News of their survival had spread, and people wanted to hear what they had learned, what they had seen, what the humans were really like. Stood before the High Admiralty and told the truth, all of it, the monuments and the music, the weapons and the kindness, the fear and the hope. When she finished, the chamber was silent. The High Admiral, an ancient being with scales faded nearly to white, leaned forward in his chair. You are telling us, he said slowly, that the humans are not monsters. They are not monsters, confirmed. You are telling us that they want peace. They want peace. They have always wanted peace, but they will fight if pushed, and they will win. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. The Conclave has feared humans for 200 years, he said. That fear has shaped our policies, our borders, our entire way of thinking about the universe. You are asking us to let go of all of that. I am asking you to try something new, said. Fear did not keep us safe. It kept us isolated, alone, staring at the darkness and imagining monsters that were not there. She stepped forward, holding up the book had given her. The humans have a concept they call courage. It does not mean the absence of fear. It means choosing to act despite the fear. It means reaching out when you want to hide. It means hopping when despair seems easier. She looked around the chamber at the assembled leaders. We can keep fearing them. We can keep building walls and weapons and hiding in our safe little corner of the galaxy. Or we can choose something different. We can reach out. We can connect. We can learn from each other and grow together and build a future that is better than the past. She placed the book on the Admiral's desk. This is a story, she said. A human story about a child from another world who teaches a man what really matters. They gave it to us as a gift, as an invitation, as a hope that we would understand. The Admiral looked at the book for a long time. What really matters? He asked quietly. Smiled. Connections, she said. Relationships, the people we love and the bonds we share. All the things we cannot see but feel in our hearts. That is what the humans taught me. That is what they want to share with us. The chamber stirred. Whispers passed between the assembled leaders. Finally, the Admiral spoke. We will consider your report, Commander. We will discuss it. We will debate it. These things take time. Nodded, she had expected nothing less. But the Admiral continued, I think perhaps you are right. Perhaps it is time to stop fearing and start reaching. Perhaps the Galactic Atlas does not have to end where we thought it did. He picked up the book and held it carefully. Perhaps it is time to add new pages. Felt something warm bloom in her chest. It was hope, she realized. The same hope the humans had shown her. The same hope that had carried her through the darkness. Thank you, Admiral, she said. She turned and walked out of the chamber, past the crowds, past the questions, past everything that waited for her attention. She found a quiet corner and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the known, the humans were looking back, waiting, hopping, ready to welcome whoever came next. The Galactic Atlas had ended at their doorstep for 200 years. But now, at last, it was ready to continue, and would be there to help write the new chapters, to build the bridges, to tame the fear and replace it with courage. Because that was what the humans had taught her. That was what she owed them. That was what she chose. The darkness between stars no longer seemed so empty. It was full of potential, full of possibility, full of futures waiting to be born. And humanity, those strange and wonderful creatures, would be there for all of it. Not as monsters, not as conquerors, just as people, reaching out, hopping, human, forever human. And that thought was the most beautiful thing of all. The Atlas continues. The story never ends. And somewhere, in a universe full of darkness, two civilizations reached across the void and found each other. Not in war, in hope, in love, in the endless, stubborn, glorious refusal to give up. That was the human gift. And now it belonged to everyone. Forever.